Hi everyone, Terrence McAnally here again with another installment of our GT750 build. Well, it looks a little bit different now. As you can tell, we've taken the engine out of the frame, and here's what we've got over there. Bare frame, swing arms off, and we've begun disassembly of the engine. Now, let me tell you where we are right now. I have not documented all the pain and heartache that has gotten us to this point right now, but let me tell you, there was some. First of all, getting the frame out of the engine. It's a 200-pound engine or so, and so really it is a two-man job if you can do it. It might be nice to have access to something like a hoist so that you can grasp the engine perhaps from underneath and pull it out using that after you've unbolted it. I didn't have access to that, so the next best thing, if you're a one-man crew, unbolt it in an orderly fashion, and I lay it on its side and wrestle it out that way, and that seems to have done the trick. Anyway, swing arms off. There were some rusted bolts there. The swing arm pivot came out with no problem, but the axle right here seems to be pretty well stuck in there, and I had the idea that perhaps I would press it out with the hydraulic press, but I didn't do it because I've decided that we're going to go with a disc rear wheel, and that's from a GT750, I believe, about 1978. So we don't have to worry about disassembling the hub, taking that off from the swing arm. Onto the engine. Now, as I said, we had some heartache and difficulty getting the head off. Primarily the problem was these bolts here, which are actually not bolts, but if you can see that, I hope that's a good shot. These are threaded sleeves on the top of which are nuts, of course. Now, these are not the pieces as you would see them, because of the 7 or so of these that there are there in the head, going through the head and securing the head to the cylinder, about 4 of these guys simply did not want to come off. So what I had decided to do was grind out the tops, and then grind out the tops with an angle grinder, and then grind out the middles of these, making them as thin as possible, as you can see I tried to do here. And when they're very thin, of course, they won't be pushing on the insides here with very much force, and you can also relieve some of the corrosion that's in there. Anyway, after doing that, I found it useful to use a slide hammer on the head, and I'm talking about the head. The head is not here today, and I'll explain that in the next video, but by fastening a blind bearing puller of the appropriate size to any one of the corresponding holes that I point to here in the head, you could exert a pretty good force on it from any one of a number of positions there, and with a few strokes it came off. Now, would that have happened if I had not gone through all of the process of grinding off these about, I think, 4 of those threaded sleeve bolts or nuts? Would it have come off as easily? I don't know. There was a lot of trial and error involved. There was a lot of banging very, very carefully with wood and a lead mallet around the perimeter of the head, but there's nothing to bang on. There's fins and so on. There's nothing to get a good upward shot. The only thing I could find is at a location here, water intake with a thermostat housing, and was concerned about breaking that, but in any case, it was necessary to use heat from a propane torch all around the perimeter of the head gasket, and I believe that helped a little. Of course, one would always want to discourage using anything that's like a wedge around here, even though we are going to resurface the head and deck the cylinder. if you mar this surface, then you're going to commit yourself to a bit of a welding job beforehand, and hopefully the damage would not be so much that you couldn't fix it. But it is possible, I suppose, to experiment with a hard nylon wedge, perhaps, that might help separate the head and the cylinder in future circumstances. In any case, more about the head later. The cylinder, or cylinders, as you can see, they are cast as one piece, and through these holes that I'm pointing to now, the remains of I think two of these threaded sleeves are still in, and there's one there, and I believe that's the other one. And I am very concerned that if I take out my rotary tool, that I might do harm to these holes. So what I'm going to do is have a plate fashioned of about 1/4 inch steel. It's going to be very, very heavy duty, and it will bolt down to these threaded holes here. And from that, I'll be able to exert a force on it with a mallet on this side and this side. And I can also bore through it and locate 1, 2, 3 positions a means of securing a slide handle to it. And so then I can tap from here and here on the plate itself and pull from here, here, and here. There's one other trick thing I am going to do also, if needed, and that is to fashion a puller out of the plate. And I will show you how that's done in a subsequent video, but the general idea is on that plate there would be the holes here, of course, to fasten the slide hammer, and there will be these various threaded bolt locations here. But for these holes, through which you see the studs that go down to the cylinder, you can push on those, and then you'll actually be pushing on the case, and so separating, if you will, pulling on the plate and pushing on those. It's just a variation of a wheel puller. So let's start with tapping on the plate on either side, accompany that with pulling from here, here, and here on the plate with the slide hammer, and then we'll see what happens around the perimeter. That's a whole lot of very good angled force that we can put on the thing. And with a little bit of that, and some luck, and some heat, perhaps down here around the base gasket, I think that cylinder will come up. And anyway, that's where we are in this process. Motor out of the frame, head off, fashioning a puller for that, and the frame we'll talk in detail about later. Terrence McAnally, join us for the 3rd installment coming up soon.